And Jill, thank you both so much for being here. Let me start with your ages. You're 22, Jessa?
Mm-hmm.
And how old are you, Jill?
24.
Okay. So this happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you? Let me start with you, Jill. How old were you when Josh inappropriately touched you?
I was 12.
12. And how about you?
I guess I was 9 or 10.
Okay. And you are going on the record as being two of Josh's victims.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel strange to use that word?
You know, I think we didn't choose to come out and tell our story. This wouldn't have been our first choice, but now that this story has been brought about, we really feel like as we've been seeing these headlines, as we've been seeing things that people are saying about our family, we feel like as the victims, we have to come out and speak. This is something like we chose to do. Nobody asked us to do this. Jess and I were talking, we're like, oh my goodness, most of the stuff out there is lies. It's not truth. Mm-hmm. And so for truth's sake, we want to come out and set the record straight.
But sitting here today was when I said, victims, you furrowed your brow a little. I mean, do you feel like the victim of a molestation?
Well, I think in the case of what Josh did, it was very wrong. I'm not going to justify anything that he did or say it was okay. It's not permissible. But I do want to speak up in his defense against people who are calling him a child molester or a pedophile or a rapist, and people are saying. And I'm like, that is so overboard and a lie, really. I mean, people will get mad at me for saying that, but I'm like, I can say this, I was one of the victims, so I can speak out and I can say this and set the record straight here. Like in Josh's case, he was a young boy in puberty and a little too curious about girls, and that got him into some trouble, and he made some bad choices, but really the extent of it was mild, inappropriate touching on fully clothed victims. Most of it while girls were sleeping.
We didn't even know about it until he went and confessed it to my parents, and
Neither one of
they
you
shared
knew.
it with us. No.
None of the victims were aware of what happened until Joshua confessed, and then
It wasn't like we were keeping a secret, afraid or something. It was we didn't know until Josh explained to my parents what his thought process was, what everything was.
Well, how did you learn about it? I mean, did your parents sit you down at a meeting, or
my
what happened?
parents took us aside individually, and they said, here's what's happened. And at that point, of course, you're like, oh, you're shocked,
So your parents were the ones to tell you
my parents.
you were molested, or
Yeah.
and you too?
Yeah.
At the same time or separately?
No, individually. They talked to me.
Let me start with you. What was your reaction to that?
Well, I was like shocked to kind of like, okay, this is strange. Like,
You had no memory of it?
I didn't know. I didn't understand, okay, this is what's happened until my parents told me. And so I think at that point it was just kind of like
it's like you never think like this will happen to me or something. And in our case, it's very mild compared to what happens to some
I know
young
so many
women.
girls go through things that are way worse.
So for me, even when my parents came and sat down and told me this, I was like, really? Like, I'm sad, I'm shocked. At the same time, like Jessa was saying, I was shocked. I'm like, okay, and I'm sad because this is my older brother who I love a lot, and so it's like, they're conflicting there.
Did you feel angry?
I did. I was angry at first. I was like, how could this happen? And then, my parents explained to us what happened, and then Josh came and asked each of us individually, I know, but he asked me to forgive him. And I had to make that choice to forgive him, and it wasn't something that somebody forced, like, oh, you need to do this, it's like, you have to make that decision for yourself.
So let's go back in time, because we're ahead of ourselves a little bit. You're 12, you're 10, around there, and your parents sit you down individually and tell you that this happened. Do you remember whether that was 2002 or 2003?
Don't remember.
We're little girls at this point.
That's fine. So you have the family meeting. Did Josh go away right after that?
He did pretty soon after. I know at the time I was I was young, so it kind of seems like everything was a whirlwind or whatever.
Was there time that you were in the house with Josh knowing this prior to him going away?
Not really. I think that whenever it was brought to my attention, it wasn't very long after that Josh would weigh.
Do you remember a dynamic of being in the house thinking,
we were sad.
There's my brother, I know this information now, what am I supposed to do with this?
We were sad whenever he was sent away, you know, because it's your brother. He's like, you're all still kids, you know, but at the same time, it was burned in our memory. Josh made some very bad decisions, and he's going to suffer the consequences of those decisions. It's not something.
Do you get the chance to? Maybe you weren't feeling. I mean, you said you were feeling angry, but do you get the chance to express that anger to him? Did you fight?
No.
I think for us, our situation is so different than most girls in that he's very subtle in the way, like he knew in his mind my actions are wrong and I have bad intentions, but he was very sly, like the girls didn't catch on, you know? It was like, okay, if he catches a girl sleeping, you know, like a quick feel or whatever, or like, you know, if you're just not really aware, you know, in the situations that happened when the girls were awake, it was like they weren't aware of what was happening. It was very subtle. And so I think that for us, it's like, okay, we realize this is serious, but at the same time, it wasn't like a horror story or like this terrible thing where we're like, oh my goodness, we're like,
that's one of the headline covers, House of Horrors.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That is not how you view it.
No, and I think my parents, they acted I can see looking back as an adult now, they handled the situation very well.
Yes.
They set up safety guards in our house, and they acted, you know, they sent Josh away, they had him get help. When he came back, he was a totally different person, like totally different.
How did that manifest itself? How did you see that?
You could just tell. I mean, he was repentant whenever he left, and he was very, like, apologizing and all, but when he came back, it was just like, okay, I can see he's made some life changes here during this time, and he's never again going to go down that path.
Did you feel scared at all that he might resume?
You know, when this happened, when my dad and mom sat down with us and shared with us what happened, and Josh asked us to forgive him, we had to make that choice that I think everyone has to make. And my dad explained to us, he said, you know, there's a difference between forgiveness and trust. That's not the same thing. You know, you forgive someone and then you have boundaries. Forgiveness with boundaries. And so trust comes later. You know, Josh destroyed that trust at the beginning. And so he had to rebuild that. And so I think when he came back, that was his point of, okay, you know, when he asked us to forgive him, that was the point of rebuilding. And so from there,
what were the safeguards that were put into place just to make sure?
Well, not, I was going to say, not, you know, being alone. My parents said, okay, we're not going to do this hide and seek thing where two people go off and hide together, and
not babysitting the girls. Or
you know, just
at night in your room. Locked.
Locks on the doors. You know, everybody's in bed. Girls in the girls' room, boys in the boys' room. And so, they just and as a mother now, I look back and I think, you know, my parents did such an amazing job for me. Even when we went through the DHS investigation, they complimented my parents on what an amazing job they did through that process. And so I think not only taking the legal actions that they did and then going the extra mile, and yet I see as a mom, I hope that I can set up the same safeguards in my family that they did, and, you know, reaching the heart of their children, and not only trying to take care of Josh, but us girls.
Do you, for the record, did you ever have any trouble with any other family members?
No.
This is just about Josh. And just about the period prior to counseling.
And my parents did talk with us, you know, when all this came up, they sat down with all of us kids, every age, you know, sat down and just said, if anyone ever touches you inappropriately, come and tell mom and dad, you know, you have a voice.
Did you start to think of yourself after they told you as a victim? I mean, is there a moment where the light goes off that, wow, I am the victim of molestation?
I don't believe so. I don't think it was like...
No, well, I think in our situation, like I said, like we weren't aware that that was going on.
So you don't, you know, because when you talk to child molestation victims, they often talk about feeling shame, things like that.
Well,
did you go through any of that given the circumstances here?
I think definitely when we were doing the DHS investigation and they're asking you to tell your story, that's probably, I mean, it's one thing to talk to mom and dad and say, wow, okay, this happened, but it's another thing when a complete stranger is like, tell me your story here. And so,
and our parents told us, they said, we all went down there, they took us down there and they said, we're going to share what happened here. And they told us, our parents told us, be completely open and honest.
They're here to help you,
Share what happened.
And you met with the investigators and you told them your story.
Complete strangers to us,
We did, we told them we were honest. So here's what happened. And we told them the complete story. And my parents said, this is not something that people are going to blab around. This is something you can tell them, you can trust them. Tell them your story. Just like you talk to mom and dad, it's a safe place to talk. And so,
and yet,
unfortunately not. We told them the complete story, and my parents said, this is not something that people are going to blab around. This is something you can tell them, you can trust them. Tell them your story, just like you talk to mom and dad. it's a safe place to talk. And so,
and yet,
unfortunately not.
Any hesitation when you decided to put your family on TV that this would come out?
No, well, I think whenever we started the TV show, the reality show was, 5 years or something after all of this, we had dealt with it. As a family, we had moved on.
So you weren't laboring under a fear that we're targets now, we're on TV, we're outspoken.
And I think all the people in our lives, like our close friends and the people, the officials that had helped us, walked alongside our family during this time and walked us through some of our hardest days, they knew about this. It wasn't like it was a complete secret and it was just our family. Like, people knew. They had walked us through this journey, and we felt like, okay, this is a done deal.
Different, it's like the people during that time knew what was going on.
But we didn't feel like there was any need to share private information with people who weren't a part of the problem or the solution. We had dealt with that when the investigation with our family was closed. After all those months, they said, your parents have done an amazing job. They were praising my parents, and they said, we found your home is a safe place for children.
What about, some of the family's critics would argue, well, you put your neck out there because not only did you go on TV, but you advocated strong Christian values. And now critics are saying, you've essentially waived your right to do that. Not you, the victims necessarily, but the family shouldn't have been out there doing that since they knew what had happened. Is that fair?
Well, I think that, some people, I've heard them saying, you're hypocrites. Well, if you go back and look at everything that people have seen on our lot in television, we've never claimed to be a perfect family. My parents have always actually stated, we are not a perfect family. We are just a family.
We have challenges and struggles just like anybody else.
Lots of kids that have 20 times more, people in our family. So
How about Josh, though? He's been out there, with the Family Research Council, talking about family values and suggesting that certain lifestyles are not appropriate, in particular the gay and lesbian lifestyle.
I mean, it's right to say, here's what I believe, here's my values. Even if you've made stupid mistakes or failures, if you've had failures in your past, it doesn't mean you can't be changed. And I think that's where, I think the real issue is people are making this sound like it happened yesterday.
And like that it's ongoing.
And that it was very, very severe.
It happened 12 years ago, when he was a child himself. And so I think seeing the change in his life, like, we've witnessed it. We know. Like, we're the people that live with him. It's like, and Jessa made a good point, too. As we were talking, she said, I think the hard part is that our viewers feel like they're in our home every Tuesday night. They feel like they know our family, but when we're out and about and people are coming up to us and saying, hey, Josie, or hey, Jackson, and we're going, hi, we're really friendly and everything, but we don't know for the first time. It's like we don't have that personal.
And so, like, people expecting to know every detail of our lives when this happens long ago,
before
was
the
taken
TV show
care of.
About.
So we're not going to say, hi, nice to meet you. Here's everything that's ever gone on.
Of course.
So
Right. So, and when you found out this was going to be on the cover of In Touch Weekly, what was your reaction?
I'll tell you, we were pretty furious.
I called
my
husband
not
and I was in tears. I couldn't believe what was going on. I called him.
It was whenever I heard the police report had been released that I said, what? Like, they don't have a right to do this. This isn't, we're victims. They can't do this to us.
And yet they did.
And they did.
The system that was set up to protect kids, both those who make stupid mistakes or have problems like this in their life and the ones that are affected by those choices, it's greatly failed. And for us, is like, go to the store and there's your picture on the or magazine or whatever, and you're like,
well, and like they're like, you know, whatever choices, whatever things they might say, you know, legally we can do this or we can do that. It's like, it's obviously not, like, they're not.
And yet they did.
And they did.
the system that was set up to protect kids, both those who make stupid mistakes or have problems like this in their life and the ones that are affected by those choices, it's greatly failed. And for us, is like, go to the store and there's your picture on the or magazine or whatever, and you're like,
well, and like they're like, you know, whatever choices, whatever things they might say, you know, legally we can do this or we can do that. It's like, it's obviously not, like, they're not protecting us here.
well, and the Freedom of Information Act is not, you can't FOIA juvenile cases.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's probably some hokey pokey going on there. I don't know what the whole deal was. I mean, I'm guessing
there may be an agenda. I mean, I know that the tabloids that released this even have, you know, they're used to exploiting women. They have the parent company.
yeah, well, Bauer, that, like, they're a major porn provider. And so I don't know if they're just, maybe their mindset, they're just used to making objects out of women, and maybe we just didn't seem any different.
But Jill, when we see the tears, what was it? I mean, what was it about the disclosure that was so painful?
Well, I see it as a re-victimization that's even 1,000 times worse.
Why?
Because this is something that was already dealt with. We've already forgiven Josh. We've already moved on.
Is it
And
humiliating, or what is the emotion that you're feeling?
Well, it's not the truth, first of all. Everything was distorted. And so we feel like our story was not being told. And we felt like it shouldn't have been told. The victims are the only ones who can speak for themselves. And so now that it's already been warped and told however they want to portray it, then we felt like that's why Jess and I wanted to come out and just say, like, that's not what happened. Mm-hmm. We've dealt with this. We've taken care of it.
Do you feel like you're speaking on behalf of your other sisters too, your younger sisters?
We can't speak for the other ones, but I feel like, as far as,
I can speak for the others, and as far as saying that everybody's angry that this has been publicized. Because,
yes.
How about when it comes to forgiving Josh?
Oh, everybody's forgiven. We all forgiven, and we've all moved on.
That was long ago, and
Back the babysitter.
back then.
Her too?
What?
The babysitter as well?
Definitely.
Your parents suggest they're looking into legal action against the parties involved. Would you like to see that?
Up next. Well, Jill,
Your parents suggest they're looking into legal action against the parties involved. Would you like to see that?
We'll see.
I can say that what was done was very wrong. I mean, the terrible thing about being a victim is that you're helpless in the moment over the actions of others. Like, and then I feel like in this situation, we're again helpless as to the people handing over this report, and then the tabloids taking that and printing that and sensationalizing it and really using it for their own profit.
We've seen so many in this country stand up on behalf of child victims. We've seen very little of that with respect to your case and your privacy rights and the violation of those promises that your record and your testimonial would be sealed. Do you think it has something to do with who you are, who the Duggars are, what your family stands for?
I definitely feel like people that already don't really like our family would be the ones to really spread this around and maliciously do so, slanderously do so. definitely they didn't have the victims in mind. People that are like, oh, I feel for the girls. I'm like, no, you really don't, because if you did, you would respect our wish for things to remain private. And that's just, I mean, that's been a violation of trust.
And I feel for the other families out there. I mean, statistics say 2/3 of families deal with something like that, and that's only the families who are reporting it. And I feel for the other victims out there and other families whose maybe the parents may take a pause before they do something to report or to take care of what's going on. And maybe, you know, these other victims will continue to live just not even having their situations dealt with.
Some have referred back to the charges, or the incident initially, and said, well, the only reason charges weren't brought is that the statute of limitations had run by the time the police finally looked into this. Would you ever have supported a prosecution against Josh?
I think by the time that all of that was done, the report was made and everything, it was very obvious to everyone, us and our family, friends, officials, that Josh was a completely changed person. He had not gone down that path for years. He was humble before God, before us, before the officials that were involved.
I mean, we all went through professional counseling, but Josh did too. And I mean, he had to pay for his own.
Did you have to work that out? I mean, what were you working out there?
You know, what do you do in counseling? You talk about what happened. You talk about the actions that have been taken. You know, we really wanted to make sure that everything in our hearts that was dealt with.
Was it cathartic for you? Did you solve some things in there?
It was really good, and I'm really grateful that my parents encouraged us to go through that, to get that licensed counseling and all that. I think it was really helpful for us to just kind of close that chapter, move past it. You know, it really was.
Do you remember? Well, for you, looking back with the exclusion of the disclosure of it today, you know, in the recent weeks, what was the most difficult part of it for you?
You said with the exclusion of today?
Yeah.
I don't think we can exclude today. I mean, definitely it was difficult whenever all this came up, you know, the shock of, oh, this has happened, and then talking about it with the family and counseling. I mean, every step was just kind of like difficult to walk through. But I would definitely say that these past 2 weeks have been 1,000 times worse for us.
Do you care about the TLC show? Do you want to see it continue?
You know, we've always just had the mindset of this show is just a window of opportunity that God's allowed our family to be on television and to share with other people our lives.
Well, what about the thought that that opportunity may now disappear, not just for Josh and your parents, but for you as well?
Life goes on, really. We're not a TV family. We're a family that just happened to be on TV. And so,
I mean, we do love our film crew, I will say that. We love
You're going to miss the crew.
We have the best film crew. They're like family to us. And so we'll see. You know, we'll see what life brings. And so we don't know at this point.
This is it, right? There's not like another big Duggar family secret that is going to come out.
No.
Okay, so you feel like if you can weather this storm with TLC.
You know, we've been through a lot together, I think. And I think our viewers have seen that, even just the journeys that our family has taken. It's not always been easy on television. They've seen that, and yet we've still allowed the filming to take place and just allowed people to see our struggles, see things that we've gone through, from my little sister Josie being born premature, and then Jubilee, funerals and stuff. And so I think this is another struggle that we're going through right now, another hard time. But I think it's bringing our family even closer together.
Definitely.
And we'll make it through this too.
We were saying that. We were all sitting around like when all this came out, and I was just like, guys, the people out there, they might be stirring things up, but hey, look on the bright side. At least none of us are feuding. At least we're all in harmony as a family, and we all love each other like crazy.